Overthinkers. It's Sweets and Lisa here. Hope all is
Hey.
well. So here we are. We're ready to go down every rabbit hole of spiraling that you can think of, on what's wrong, what's right, and every
Just
topic.
everything,
We
everything we're thinking, all the things.
like to do it with you, and so here we are.
It's cold outside. We might have colds inside. It's
That's
just,
true. A
it's fine.
little under the weather, that's all.
It's fine.
Yeah.
All right, so
Tell me what you got for me. What's the word on the
it's
street?
my turn. So the
Yeah.
word today is curiosity.
That's a great word. I'm gonna want context, but like,
Yeah, so I'll give you some context and
yeah,
while you think about it. So I think what made me think of this is that I think both of us try in our lives to take a posture of curiosity, right? So being a learner and being open to new ideas and being curious, I think is kind of part of both of our personalities. But I have been struggling with that posture sometimes. So I want to know what you think about that word, and then I will pose the question.
yeah. So I honestly, I think for me, curiosity is like the number one thing I desired to always be like, and I also look for it in other people. I think that we live in a world now where we allow people to do a lot of our own thinking for us. And I always say, like, sometimes when I'm having these thoughts, I'm like, is that my own? Like, is that me really thinking that? Or did I see it a thousand times on social media that's made me now believe that it's true? And so I think like for me, I try very hard not just to be curious about things but about people. For me, curiosity isn't just about like just went to London and I was curious as can be about a bunch of different things, but like of learning, but I'm also very curious about people's stories. And I think there's something to be said about just inviting that in, taking a posture of curiosity versus judgmentalness, of just saying like if someone tells you something about themselves, being like, I'm curious why it came to be that way. Like, what makes you think that way? That's a question I ask a lot of clients too, is like, tell me more, like, what makes you say that? Right. So,
I think I'm glad that you reminded me of the Ted Lasso, curious, not judgmental,
yeah.
because those two, I think of those two things, curiosity, of course. There's nothing that's more of like a turn off in me than somebody being judgmental. But I think the reason this came up for me is that in a leadership context, in a parenting context, and we were just talking about family before we
Yeah,
jumped on,
totally.
I
You guys
actually
heard
was
the
thinking,
pre-meet, the pre-meet.
yeah, yeah. I think I've been juxtaposing curiosity and confidence. And so the question that came to mind was, and I know life is full of balance, right? We need both. But it was sort of like if you had to choose one to be for the rest of your life, which would you choose? Curiosity or confident? Like curious or confident?
I think that's a no-brainer. I would pick curious. And I know that probably wouldn't be received well in a lot of the times I do feel like I'm a kid in the candy store and being like, "Look at that." And sometimes I wonder if people think that that's like a associate me with being not like look-wise but like young in my thinking because I'm more curious than I am confident. So I would pick curiosity. And that's probably not a typical answer, but it's just true. I never want to not look at something and be like, wow, or want to know more about it. I think confidence for me is the end game. It's more about you than it is about others. Now, I say that knowing you still should have a level of confidence, right? It's not an all or nothing. If you're paying attention too much on how you look and how confident you want to be, you might lose the essence of just like exploring the world around you.
I think that's a great point. I think and I appreciate that because I think I too always want to have that mindset.
Yeah.
But when I think about leading or when I think about parenting, maybe specifically, and I think about the world that we're in where we are constantly questioning,
Yeah.
right? And everything's sort of a question and an open ended, there's another solution or there's another story or there's something else to listen to. I also think about like how structure brings freedom sometimes. So, and how systems, we talk about this too, how
All the time. Yeah.
systems and structure actually don't box you in necessarily. They actually provide you with enough stability so that you can be flexible within sort of a framework. And I think what what I've been trying to balance in both of those scenarios, and the parenting life and the leadership life, is like, to what extent can I be curious? And then at what point do I need to just put in a structure that I'm confident in, or say, like, this is what we're going to go with now,
Yeah.
or this is what I believe, to create something stable for the organization or for my kids or for the people who are working with me, so that we're not always continuing to lean into curiosity, but at some point we can not be open and say, this thing is done
Yeah.
and we're going to be confident in this thing moving forward. And then we'll revisit it and see how it's doing. But like for now, because I even think sometimes it's become like a little bit of a passive aggressive way to kind of create chaos too, is to be like, well, I'm curious. I'm curious about this other way of doing things, or tell me more about that. I'm curious. When
That's
you're really not curious, you're
that's true.
really just like, I don't agree with you.
When you use it as a weapon, right?
Yeah.
Like you got
Yeah.
to be careful that it's not being like, well, tell me more about that, and it's really trying to like corner someone in, right?
Right.
I do think what you're saying is important. Like when you say confidence in creating an infrastructure. So I think there's an illusion sometimes that when that a problem is permanent. Sometimes a problem presents itself and you're hoping you're solving the right problem, and you create the structure that it needs to for that moment in time, right? Everybody gets curious at the table, you try to solve the problem. But in 2 years from now, you could be revisiting. I think that the piece what people might mix up with confidence and making decisions is that if you were confident in your decision that you made 2 years ago, it shouldn't change. And that is incorrect, in my opinion, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're confident, the confidence shouldn't necessarily be weighed on whether the decision was, if someone thought the decision was right or wrong. It's just that was the decision, the best decision we made at that moment in time with the information that we had.
Yeah.
And so you want to lead with both, with confidence and curiosity, because 2 years later, if you start getting curious why this is happening in the organization, and is it because the decision you made 2 years ago, that you also have to have the humility to say, okay guys, we got to go back in, right? We created that. But I think where people get stuck again is that people repel curiosity because they don't want any uncertainty.
Right.
Keeps people, we could in leadership potentially get really stuck when we're not thinking through things.
Yeah, I think that's totally true. I think that's probably a better word for it, is certainty,
Yeah.
maybe. Then what I was trying to think of was like confidence in but as you were talking, you can lead with confidence and curiosity together. You can
Absolutely.
have those two things and maybe you have to have both of them.
Yeah.
Maybe you have to lead confidently with curiosity in order to create certainty, right? In the moment. In
That's
that.
true. Yeah. And I think like confidence could be, I mean, I'm just thinking through, like there's a lot of people who portray confidence, but they're not smart, and right, like, and I say that with respect, not really
Lovingly.
lovingly, like I always say, but that exude confidence, but in reality could send you down a really bad path in terms of decision making and things like that.
So go back to what you said in the beginning, because I think maybe I'm experiencing that. Um, the idea that if I'm leaning into curiosity, that I am somehow not giving off a strong enough vibe, right? Like that others are considering that more of a weak position
Yeah.
to be curious.
Yeah. I think it's society, and it's more about them than it is about you. I think if you're going the route of like, I'm confident, I'm going to kind of tell you guys this is the way we're going, people shut off their brains. Most of the time we're inundated with a lot of things and people want to be told what to do, when in reality no one really wants to be told what to do. But being curious takes a lot of brain power. And I think that also people's conditioning comes up, right? What we don't forget is that everybody at our table has some type of pathology, some conditioning that comes. So if I'm saying someone get curious or think for yourself, what if they never were taught to do that, and you're asking them to go against the grain? So then they make it about you and your leadership and your confidence, when it has nothing to do with that. It has more to do with, I'm not comfortable with how we're doing this.
I love that one.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I just love what you just said there about, if it is true, like if I'm the only one, what is it? If you're everyone's agreeing with me, then nobody's actually thinking or something like,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's asking the right questions, right?
Yeah.
And not having the answers does ensure that everyone is working on it as opposed to, yeah, but you're right. Everyone's uncomfortable of being told what to do and not being told what to do.
Yeah.
So how do you facilitate, and I know we've talked about this before, but how do you facilitate growth in a system where curiosity is the norm,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So curiosity is the norm, question asking is the norm, and everyone's brains have to be on.
Yeah. So the only thing that I think a lot of organizations do this. I think like Disney does this, right? It's like the three prong. They start with dreaming. I think that giving permission, because here's the thing. If you want people to get curious, this is how I see it. People get scared initially, like, what will this choice, how will it impact me? Like we're in education. So the classroom, the students I have in there, my work-life balance, all the things that come in, your fear usually comes in first. I think having people just throw out ideas and saying none of this right, like we're not actually going to do any, we're just dreaming right now, sky's the limit.
Right.
Because a lot of the times too, Lisa, I think that we actually could solve our problems with that higher level of consciousness, but we never reach it because we're too busy saying no to these ideas because we think it's impossible. But a lot of the times, right, it might actually be possible if we all rally together. But we
Yeah.
don't always do that because we're, rightfully so, we're thinking about ourselves. Well, ugh, what does that mean for me? Is that going to add on like a couple of more hours of work for me? So I think setting the stage, we're just dreaming now. Pretend there
Yeah.
are no boundaries. And that I think allows people to just, and you will still find people will struggle because people work within the limits all the time or protect themselves so much, right?
Well, right. And you have to be ready for that, right? Because that's the other thing I think can be inhibiting of being curious is that sometimes you don't want to hear what people are going to say. Like, right? Like if I ask the question, like, what are you thinking right now?
Uh-huh.
I have to deal with whatever you say.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's easier to just be like, because I said so. It's like, that's what I said we're going to do. You know what I mean? Like,
I do.
why are
You
you
want to know
upset right now? Or why is this going to be an obstacle? Or tell me what challenges you're thinking of. Like, then we have to work through those things together.
Yeah. I think you then work through like why it couldn't be or where you would start and so on and so forth. But the other thing is being very careful what you're choosing to collaborate with because some of the things to me, you can't get curious about everything. Just like
Right.
in a family system. Like sometimes I know I hear like a lot of choice a lot of the times for kids. But what kids actually need is both a healthy level of autonomy, but they actually need uh, to create the conditions of safety is that they know that someone will create a boundary for them when it's necessary. And that's
Right.
what parents do. And a lot of times leaders need to do that in a very healthy way. There are some things that I will be deciding on. And
Yes.
it's for the organization. It's those things like, or even at the end of the day, we might be collaborating and we collaborate together. But at the end of the day, like there's a decision maker and there's a confidence of that, right? I think the highest level of bad leadership is passivity if someone
Right.
who doesn't decide. So
You just let things happen
let things
around you.
happen. That's,
We've been somewhere like,
oh my God, yes, we worked there at that point.
yes.
So yeah, no, oh my gosh.
Well, right. I think that's true. I think maybe that's what I was getting out of that balance of allowing things to percolate, allowing the conversation to go on, continuing to ask those questions, and then at some point confidently saying, this is the direction we're going to go.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think you have to have both of those things.
yeah.
And I think you're right. The posture of curiosity has to be there first, right?
It does, but I don't think it comes natural. I think people have to practice it. And I think people have to practice it more and more than ever. I don't think that naturally, like sometimes in a workplace, it's not always like, well, what are you going to do with my curiosity? There's some levels of untrust, right? Like,
Right.
if I come up with all of this, what is it going to mean? So for me later,
Well, I think even we've talked about how difficult it is to talk about anything with some people right now if you're coming from very different backgrounds or philosophies or belief systems around what's happening, in the world right now, in our country right now. Like it can be really hard to have a conversation if you're not entering into it
Yeah.
from
And we have to remember the
curiosity.
mind, right? Like it's a bias, but we will literally, confirmation bias, thank you,
Mhm.
comes into play. And again, I will go back to human beings are complex and we need more and more work on understanding how we're wired to be able to even get to a place of curiosity. Not to the point of like, every single day, having your staff work on themselves, but there's a layer where people have to understand how they think in order to open up those floodgates to think through things.
Well, right, because if you're being curious, you can't be defensive with whatever people come at you with,
Yeah,
right?
great
And
point.
I think that's, oh man, yes,
Yeah,
that's what it is. Because it's not hard to be curious if you're truly open
yeah,
to
yeah.
whatever is going to be said. It's actually very easy to
Mm,
be curious and let people say what they want to say. The difficulty is hearing it if you are going to take offense to it or you're going to argue your point.
yeah. Or you're waiting to argue your point. You're collecting evidence, especially if you don't like the person. So you're collecting evidence to make sure like they can't be right. There's a whole bunch
Right.
of dynamics that go on.
That's the fake curiosity that I was talking about, where
Yeah.
people are like, I'm curious. Why would you think that? And they're not actually curious.
No,
They don't care.
they're
Yeah,
just trying
it's,
to get you. Yeah.
yes. Okay, so you're connecting some dots here for me. So
Yeah.
a person can confidently lead with curiosity if you are truly okay
Yeah.
with hearing the other person out
That's
and
it.
not connecting or attaching to it, but instead being like letting that be in the air, whatever it is, and moving forward together, right? Or moving forward on your own if you have to make the decision.
Yeah, like not being so attached to a solution you think is the right answer. Sometimes it's just really allowing process to take its place. That's why a lot of the times I love when I go into certain IEP meetings where it's very organic, where we actually don't know and typically you shouldn't know, but you don't always know where you're going to land. And I think that's actually the richest meetings that I have is
Right.
when I don't know and we're actually all getting curious at the table and asking like would this really work for this kiddo, and it actually is better because no one's coming in there with being like, well, this is the thing that should be the thing that fixes everything.
Yeah, but think how confident everyone needs to be at the table to walk into that meeting not knowing where it's going to go, right? How high a level of skill
Yeah,
everyone needs to be in that moment to react to everything
yeah,
in a professional way,
yes,
to have thoughts, to have answers, to have like engaged dialogue.
yeah,
You can't go in there with like a low level of knowledge and skill
no. And
and
this is
encounter curiosity, right?
Yes. So this is where I get very passionate about. Being curious doesn't mean you go in there kumbaya and it's like everybody
Right.
hugs. Curiosity comes from a place of high level of intelligence and skill. Like that is not to me like it's not those things aren't separate. Like when you're a curious person, think about even what you're obtaining. And you do have to come in with a high level of skill to be able to be comfortable when someone's like, I actually don't agree with that. Or, like, let me tell you what I've been curious about. And it might be polar opposite of that.
So you said something about it's more about, so if someone has discomfort, right,
Yes. Uh huh.
with me truly being curious,
Uh huh.
what does that tell you about that interaction, right? If I'm actually entering into a
Yeah.
discussion and I'm truly curious and the other person is uncomfortable with that,
Yeah.
or I'm uncomfortable with another person's level, like what does that mean about me?
About you.
Like if I'm uncomfortable with somebody being curious, what does that mean? Does that mean that I am not feeling like I can be vulnerable in that moment?
Yeah.
Like a
And
lack of psychological safety, right?
it could be a variety of things. It could be the person itself. Like, and if you have a high level of discernment too. So if something's making you feel uncomfortable, this is just me from knowing you a long time, it's because something fishy is going on underneath. Like you're a real good read of people. And so if you're not being able to show up with your curious self, then is an indicator to me that there's an issue. The issue at hand is not the issue at hand.
Yeah,
Like
something
there's
else is
something
going on.
underneath and you're guarding yourself. I do the same thing. Like if I'm talking about something and something is off, right? It feels funny. I will retreat more. I'll be less curious. I'll be more protective. I'll be more attentive to what the conversations are happening, the dynamics. I'll pay attention to body language. So I would say that that would be my first indicator on it. Or, right, if it is someone you trust and that isn't the case, sometimes it could press on something that makes you feel like, right, sometimes it presses on what we think we should be presenting as, right? So if I go in a meeting and I'm like, I should be this confident person, this leader, and someone says something and it's opposite of what I was thinking, I now maybe have lost that perception of myself. And
Yeah.
that I think can push against our soft spots, for lack of better words, like
Yeah.
our conditioning. Like, right, it could push back on our, like, anything that we have a reaction to is because we have a conditioning that we grew up with, and if we are having a reaction to, it's pushing against that conditioning, and
Yeah.
that's what it is.
And your story, like that
And
you're
their
telling
story.
about yourself
That's it.
or about your interaction, like you two together.
There's a tape that we play. Like, you're play what you've heard me say this before, but like a lot of people too, when they get mad, they try to play their movie on our screen and
Hmm.
expect us like to control us in a certain way or whatever it might be. And when they're not, and they get mad when they aren't able to do that, number one, run. But number two, that's a win for you or for me if I don't let someone play their movie on my screen.
Okay. I think what I'm coming away with,
Yeah.
which is good.
Yeah.
I think I was coming in thinking you couldn't have both at the same time, but I think what I'm coming away with is that you can, and we probably should be
Yes.
confident that curiosity is a good skill to
Yeah.
utilize
Yeah.
as long as you're confident enough to know when to make just when to make decisions, when to kind of when you've gotten enough information to be confident in
That's
moving
it.
forward.
You let people put their, I think you're right. I think exactly. You let your people put their best foot forward in conversation. And at the end, though, you don't want it to be in vain.
Right,
And you have confidence in the people and in yourself to make that decision, knowing that 2 years from now, it might be different and that's still okay.
right.
Yeah. So,
This was a good one. I
yeah,
needed this today.
no,
Thank you. So, overthinkers, we're here for you. If you have questions, we have our email in the show notes. We want you to email us things that you want to hear us toss around and hear Zwitza talk about research and quotes and all the things that she's good at digging up for us. So, we're here for it.
yeah,
We're here for the rabbit holes.
that's it. So, we're going to close up our tabs.
Tabs.
Yes. And until next time.
Give yourself some grace.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.